So you want to play Gears of War 4 Horde solo? I have some tips and tricks for you that will help you have more fun doing it and be more successful. Hey guys, it's Chris with Blind Man's Bluff Gaming. Welcome back, and I hope you're doing awesome today. If this is your first time here, are you looking to stay up to date on the latest Gears of War 4 news and Horde tips and tricks videos? Then go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything. Now to start with, guys, let me give you a PSA and let you know that the fastest way to level up, get XP, get currency, etc. in Horde is to play in a group. Basically in Gears of War 4 Horde, how it works is you're not actually earning XP and currency based on your performance, but it's based on just clearing the wave. So actually playing with a group is actually a lot easier to gain XP and clear levels at higher difficulties, which is where you're going to get the bulk of your XP and currency. However, you can play solo and do it successfully. Now first of all, guys, there's two ways you can actually play Horde solo. The first way is to actually trying to get XP and just, leveling up your character. And the second way is actually trying to beat 25 waves of Horde Frenzy, or actually trying to beat 50 waves of Horde. Now to start out with, I recommend running one of two different classes if you're going to play Horde solo. The first class is the Scout, and the second class is the Engineer. Now for your Scout build, I recommend having deposit bonus on, and make this a priority when you're leveling up your class to get your deposit bonus up to level 6 as soon as possible. Simply because it makes a huge difference in the amount of power you're going to end up depositing in the Fabricator, which is going to allow you to build your fabrications faster and repair them. Now for your second skill, I recommend health boost. Third skill, shotgun damage. Fourth skill, health regeneration boost. And fifth skill, maybe shotgun magazine size or dodge for extra, health protection. Now you don't necessarily need all 5 of these skills. I'd recommend maybe the first 3 skills are the most important. That's why I layered them this way. Now if you're going to run Engineer, the first skill I recommend you probably should have, and again, this is the skill you want to max out with your cards as soon as possible, and that's Repair Boost. Now this makes a huge difference in the amount of power you use to repair your fortifications, as well as how fast you repair them, which is going to make a big difference, especially when you get to level 3 and level 4. The second skill I recommend is Barrier Discount, just because it's very critical if you're running Engineer to get those barriers up as soon as possible when you're playing by yourself. The third skill I recommend is either Sentrie or Turret Discount. Now this, again, back to what I was talking about, whether you're playing for kills or you're playing to beat 25 waves or 50 waves will depend upon what you choose here. Sentries will allow you to get more kills because they get kills and they accrue towards your kill bounties. Now the only problem with them is they're going to take a lot of power and they're going to slow down the leveling up of your Fabricator, and you can kind of get behind on power a little bit, or you might not be able to repair all your stuff if you build up your base a little bit too big. Instead, if you're going to try to go 25 waves or 50 waves solo, then in my opinion a turret is a better investment, just because it's not going to use as much power and you're always going to have it if you need it. Now for your fourth skill, I recommend Sentry Capacity, and for your fifth skill I recommend Fortification Health. Now this is my basic go-to Engineer build for playing Horde with others and by myself, just because the Fortification Health affects all your fortifications. So it makes your barriers super beefy, your turrets super beefy, everything, and it works really well. After you select your class and equip your skills, now it's time to equip your bounty. Now you can either equip a 100 kill bounty or a 200 kill bounty, and whether you're going for XP or to beat the entire game of 50 or 25 waves, I still recommend you put on a kill bounty. The nice thing about a kill bounty is even if you fail a wave, the kills that you got in that wave will still count towards that bounty. So, for example, if you get on a boss wave and you keep wiping, it's not a big deal because you're still going to end up getting your kill bounty filled up. Setting up your base. Now, the most important thing you do if you're going to play solo is choosing the right map to play on and the right place to put your fabricator. Now, some of my favorite maps are Blood Drive, War Machine, Raven Down, and actually Checkout. Now, these maps will allow you to set up in a place where you can basically have 1 or 2 lanes coming at you. Now, you don't necessarily have to play on these maps. You can play on whatever map you like. Now, if you want to play on a different map, I suggest starting with the multiplayer spawns and just checking those out as far as how well they're going to work for a base. Now, ideally for a base, what you want is the fewest lanes coming at you at one time. Ideally 1, 2 is okay, 3 is doable, but any more than that is pretty hard. Now, when it comes to choosing a base, I like to think of it like the movie 300, where you're just basically one guy and you got a horde coming at you. And the story of 300, why it worked was because they funneled the enemies into a small portion where they could take them on. And that's what you're doing if you're playing Horde by yourself, is you're funneling them into a small area. Now, another thing to keep in mind when you're building your base is your fabricator has like a small no respawn zone around it. So wherever you place it in your base, think of it kind of as another player, that it has a no spawn zone around it. So what can happen sometimes is if you build a base, for example on Blood Drive, if you're up in the multiplayer spawn and you start the wave in that room, they can still spawn across the way in the other room. But if you place the fabricator kind of in the center of the up top there, it'll keep them from spawning in that other room once the game starts. Tip number 1, you're going to want to choose the right guns to carry. One of the big problems you're going to run into playing by yourself are the Guardians. Now, the shields on the Guardians are designed to take a ton of damage, and since you're one guy, you're going to need to be able to put out that damage by yourself. Now, what I've found is actually the Enforcer, which is not a great gun, but it's actually really good for taking down Guardian shields. What I like to do is carry an Enforcer, a Lancer, Retro Lancer, and as my secondary gun, I like to carry the Overkill, just because you can pack 8 rounds into one clip and put out a lot of damage without reloading. Tip number 2, when you start playing, try and build during the wave. So you're buying fortifications and placing barriers or buying a turret or whatever during the wave, during lulls in the wave. You don't want to do it while you're taking fire. One of the biggest challenges you're going to have playing Horde by yourself is that you have to do everything. So time management is very important, and buying fortifications is a low risk activity versus running out and trying getting ammo boxes during the wave. Tip number 3, buy sentries or a turret. Again, if you're just going for kills, I recommend just buying a sentry as an engineer. If you're a scout, probably not, because it's going to burn your power pretty hard. But if you're playing engineer, you can buy a sentry, maybe 2, and just refill them and just use that to help build up your kill bounty. Now, if you're trying to beat 25 waves of Horde Frenzy or even 50 waves of Horde Regular, I recommend investing in the man turret instead, simply because you can control when you use it. So for me, I would use it sparingly, use it for taking out the Guardians or chunky enemies, or if they really start pooling up, simply because it's going to take power to refill it and maintain it. And as far as placement with your man turret, you want to make sure you place it in a spot where it's not taking fire. Generally speaking, I mean, if you're on it, it's going to take fire, but you want to put it off in a corner where you have a good angle on your enemies without them being able to shell you as you're on it. Tip number 4, when you're building barriers, build them in an X pattern. So you put them, lay them one on top of the other, kind of like Lincoln logs. And this will effectively double the health of your barriers, which is extremely important when you're playing by yourself. The last thing you want to do is have your barriers go down and get flooded in by a swarm. Tip number 5, protect your flanks. Now, on certain maps, when you build your base, I'm going to give Reclaimed Windflare as an example. If you're inside the building, which is actually a really good base, you're still going to have that flank way on the side where the steps are. If you place a barrier up on top of the steps and a sentry below, that sentry is going to take care of any juvies, trackers, the occasional swarm or DB that comes over there, and it's not going to cost you a lot to keep it there because it's only going to kill 1 or 2 enemies a wave, and that's going to work really well. Tip number 6, buy a repair tool. Now obviously if you're an engineer, you don't need to buy a repair tool because you get one for free, but if you're playing Scout, you're going to have to make the decision when to buy one. Now I recommend buying one after you buy a turret and refill that turret right after you get done using it. The last thing you want to happen is you run to grab the turret because you're getting overrun and it's empty. And that's a bad feeling. Tip number 7, build spare fortifications. So to start with, I'd recommend building a spare man turret and putting it at the back of your base. So if like you get totally overrun and you can't even stay on the turret in the front, just go to the back and grab that turret and hopefully you'll survive. The nice thing about having a spare barrier or 2 is I can just put it in place, especially if I get pressed for time. Say I got to repair a bunch of other barriers, or I got to run for ammo. I can just grab that extra barrier and just put it into place. If you are looking for more Gears of War 4 Horde tips and tricks videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything. Until next time guys, this is Chris. Have an awesome one.
Feel your soul with the soil from a shadow.